Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias.
Hey everybody, Tobias here, and I'm going to be talking about camp knives. And the reason I'm doing this is because I was watching a video from Williams Knife Life, and he was talking about camp knives, knives that he thought were good for camping. Some of the, I do have, well, here's the knife I used most of the time when I was camping as a kid. This is the knife that from the age of 16 to probably about 30, this is the knife I usually took when I went camping. Everyone knows what it is. That knife that, the Camillus combat knife. What a lot of people will refer to as a K-bar. It's a fighting knife. It's 7-inch blade, stacked leather handle, a robust knife, and it is a general utility knife. It was also patterned off of a hunting knife that was around well before World War II and was adopted by the United States Marine Corps. So it is a knife that you can definitely use for camping, but it's also a little on the large size when you think about it. It's got a 7-inch blade, 5-inch handle, 12 inches overall. But this is a knife I used when I was camping as a kid or as a teenager and young adult. As I got older, I started realizing this was more knife than you really needed for just a general utility camp knife. Now, let me go into this a little bit, because what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a camp knife is not a knife for bushcrafting, and it's also not a knife for hunting. However, there's a lot of bushcraft knives that make excellent hunting knives. The thing with a bushcraft knife, though, is it is really designed for very heavy use, and usually has a very thick blade and is not ideal for every type of camp chore. They can do them, but they can't do them as well as just a general utility knife. Often bushcraft knives were designed as the one knife to rule them all, and was to, be able to baton with it and all this other stuff. For the most part, camp knives were not really designed for batoning. Some of them could definitely hold up to batoning, but that's not what they were designed for. And at one time, camp knives were normally referred to as hunting knives also. Matter of fact, I think it went straight from hunting to bushcraft knives. And some people just happen to refer to it as, oh, that's a camping knife, because they used it when they were camping. But what I'm talking about with hunting knives that are not really ideal for a camp utility knife, what I'm referring to are knives such as the sharp finger, the upswept style skinning knives. These I have found are not really the best knife for a general utility knife around the camp. And it's mainly because of that upswept blade. These are great for skinning, they're good for cutting meat and stuff like that, but there's a lot of other little chores that you want to try and do around the camp where this shape is not the best shape to have. It would be much better to have just a regular straight back clip blade. At least that's been my opinion, and I drew that opinion after taking not this one, but where is it at? Taking my Case Ridgeback upswept skinner for camping, and I used it a little bit, and I just found it not as ideal as I wanted, because you have that blade, which is really good if you're going to be processing a deer or something like that, but it just wasn't as efficient around a camp as, of all knives, this one right here. This is the Rough Rider 844, and you notice it is pretty much a little bit of a drop point, but it's really just a straight hunter. This is actually a hunting knife. They refer to it as the 844 Skinner. But this, I think, is more ideal for just your general purpose utility knife around the camp. And it's a good size for it too, because we're talking about a length that is right around 9 inches with like a 4.5-inch blade and a 4.5, 5-inch handle. And I find that kind of my sweet spot. Now other people are going to say, no, I'd much rather have a longer blade or something like that. But for me, the ideal camping knife falls in that range, right around 4.5 to 5 inches for the blade, with a handle that is about 5 inches long, and that gives you plenty of room to manipulate the handle. And what I will do now is start going through some knives that I have in my collection, because I collect a lot of camping knives from a variety of places, and I want to show you some of those knives and also tell you the pluses and negatives of them. And I think where I'm going to start with is one of those knives that everyone right now is saying, what about the Mora? And I can understand entirely where they're coming from when they talk about the Mora knife. This one here is the only one I have from Mora. This is the only Mora knife I have. It is the basic 511. And it's an excellent knife. It's well made. You have a overmolded handle with the nylon there. This one's in black and green. You got a blade that is about 3.5 inches long, really sharp. You can actually baton with this if you wanted to. Definitely good for feather sticking, stuff like that. And really good for use as a bait knife, or for, just minor little chores around the camp. Comes with a decent molded sheath. For me, the handle is a little small. It does index well in the hand, though. I've got to give them credit for that. All in all, I can understand why people scream about the Mora knives. Really inexpensive, and they can take a great beating. So, and nicely molded sheath. I love these styles of sheaths, the ones that are just drop in and hold it. You can easily remove this from the belt. You can also snap it onto a button and hang it from the front of your shirt, something like that. So a well thought out, well made knife, and I can understand why people talk so well about Mora knives. Now this is not the knife I would choose for camping, but I can understand why people do. So hats off to Mora lovers. I can understand why you're that way. A couple other knives from Scandinavia and Finland. Here's one I like a little bit more than the Mora. This one is by Rapala. It's also by J. Martinini. And this is their, they call it a drop point skinner, but this is just, it's got the same kind of handle that you see on other J. Martinini knives. You've got the beechwood handle. You have basically a rat tail tang running through here, capped off with a pin on the back. You got the brass ferrule up front. Feels good in the hand. The handle is a little small in my opinion, but you've got a really nice blade going on here, and it does have a little bit of a recurve there, so you can actually do some pretty serious cutting with it. This is a swedge up here. It's unsharpened. Just a really nice knife. I bought it for the sole purpose of going camping with it. I have not used it camping yet, and the main reason is, once again, the handle just seems a little too small for my likings, but it's a terrific knife, and I can see why people would like it. Comes with a nice leather sheath, another plus in my book. Going back to the, here's another one by Martinini. Basically the same knife, except now it is got a leather sheath and a plastic handle, or a rubber overmolded handle. Good indexing going on. You're less likely to slip up on the blade. Now it is a clip blade. Again, really, to me, this works better as a bait knife than a general utility knife around the camp. But a terrific knife, and I can see why people would say, no, that would be a terrific camp knife. And that's the thing. that's another knife that kind of falls into the camping category, is the bait knife, which is used for cutting up bait and everything when you're going fishing, and also for cutting lines when they get tangled, stuff like that, or for cutting any like brush or a little twig that's in the way. So a bait knife would work really well, and that's what these are, and they kind of fall into the camp knife family to me. And if you like this one, or if you like the Mora knife, then well, the Walmart special, this was their bait knife, and I saw this and was like, wow, that's kind of like a Mora, except it's got mystery steel out of China instead of mystery steel out of what, Sweden? I think that's where Mora is. Mora, Sweden, I believe so. Yep. And they do not identify their steel, but I trust the mystery Sandvik steel out of Sweden a lot more than I do the mystery steel that Walmart is using. So, but this is basically the Walmart clone of a Mora knife, right down to the clip-on sheath, so that can be hooked onto a button. This costs about $6, you think? So yeah, they actually make knockoff Mora knives that are much cheaper than a Mora, but seriously, unless you're just a nut who needs to have every kind of knife imaginable, skip the Walmart and just go with the Mora. It's a reasonably priced knife to begin with, so why have a knockoff of it? Let's see, let's go back in time a little bit now. So we'll get in the Wayback Machine, go back to the 50s and take a look at some of the camping knives that were used in the 50s. And a couple of them are somewhat unique. I think you'll like these. Now the first one here is the Colonial Fishmaster. So yeah, it was a knife made for fishing, but as you can tell, it's got a wider blade than what you're normally going to use to like fillet a fish or anything like that. These are like the precursor to the later bait knives, I think, but as you can see, it has a more traditional blade. These have a blade that's right around 4.5, 5 inches long. Again, the handles are a little smaller than what I like, but these were very common and very popular. What they would do to turn it into a Fishmaster is they'd take an inexpensive hunting knife and then they would just add the scaler on the top. And that is something that is actually worthwhile for a camping knife, to have this scaler on top, because you can use it for other varieties of things around the camp. And this was very common, very inexpensive knife. Often this would have been like a knife that would have been given to a Boy Scout or somebody like that as their first knife, and it would have been something that a youngster would have used on their first camping trip or something like that back in the 50s and 60s. And typically they came with a inexpensive leather sheath too. These were these were the $2, $3 knives back then. Now you can still find them, but they're not $2 or $3. A basically plastic handle over a who knows how much of a tang on that knife going into it. Another variety of these knives is this style. This is also like a fishing knife, but you could also sometimes find them without the scaler. Again, it was just a hunting knife, but what they've done now is and you can find these with two different styles of cross guards here. And notice these are now full tang also. Plastic handles just riveted on. But what we have in the middle here is a guard that acts as both a cap lifter, so you can remove a bottle cap with this end, or a can piercer on this side for the old days when beer came in cans where you had to actually pierce it open. And that's what this top is, a can piercer. And down here is your actual cap lifter. You put that on your bottle and turn it and pop the lid off. So these were, again, relatively small. I find these a little bit easier to grab, but as you can see, it's got a 4-inch handle on a 5-inch blade. So I would have much rather had a longer handle on these, but very common knives back in the 50s and 60s, early 60s rather. But in any case, this one again is by Colonial. Let's see, where's another one here? Boy Scout knife. This is a little Western Boy Scout knife, kind of small, and even though it has a handle that's actually, let's look at the size of handle compared to the Colonial. Notice this handle is smaller, much smaller. However, it fits the hand better than this one does. So it was well thought out. And this was actually a Boy Scout knife. This is a knife that was designed for Boy Scouts, and they would use it for when they went camping and stuff. It is basically a small bird and trout knife, and bird and trout knives do make a decent enough camp knife, but again, they're a little on the small side. So if you're looking for a small camp knife, the bird and trout knife might work for you. But to me, while they can work as a camp knife, they're not the ideal camp knife. I think the ideal camp knife would be a bigger version of this. Even bigger than the knife that ended up being adopted by the Air Force for their survival knife. This is the first survival knife used by SAC. This is the Boker 155, which is also a bird and trout knife, but a little bit larger. It's almost, let's take a look. Notice it's basically just an upscale version of the little Boy Scout knife I got down there. A little bit longer handle. Feels good in the hand. This one has a lanyard hole in it. That's how you can tell it was made for the U.S. Air Force. And you got a little bit longer of a blade. And the reason the Air Force chose this for a survival knife was because it would work well enough for camping, yet it was small enough that would fit into their survival gear. And the other understanding was that this was not the only tool that the crew member would have with them when they bailed out. They would also have a wood saw, they would have a .22 caliber rifle, they would also have their service revolver. So they had plenty of other stuff with them. This was for their basic chores and also for skinning small game. So that was the idea behind that knife being there. They moved on to something that was more general utility minded, and that was I wasn't planning on showing it, but they moved on to this, which originally was by Marbles. This one is by Camillus. This is the original Jet Pilot knife, and they would make a decent enough camp knife. It is a general utility knife. You've got a clip blade here. These were either sharpened or not sharpened. This one is not sharpened. You have the fuller here, which is actually for getting all your fingers on there so you can scrape and also do other things with furs and stuff like that. With the skins, once you get the thing, get an animal skin, you could scrape the skin, all the guts and everything off of the skin so you could use the skin for other things. Heavy duty pommel for pounding and everything. So this is kind of like a knife that was designed for general utility use. Later on, the Air Force would say, 6 inches is more blade than we need. And that was, again, one of them was for space saving purposes, so they went down to a 5-inch blade on it. But, if you're looking for a decent enough camp knife, I think these will make a decent enough camp knife. It's a military knife, and a lot of military knives are used for camping because, well, if you can use it in the military, you can use it camping, right? But let's move on back to more civilian style of camping knives. All right, now this is one you've probably not seen before unless you saw it on my channel, and this is the Does All, and this is by E.J. Ajax and Son. And it is a really interesting knife, and it was designed for fishing, camping, hunting, and everything. And it's really interesting because it is a rolled piece of a Swedish steel. That's the way they describe the steel. And then you have an edge that is put in there, and the top here, that can be used for both scaling fish and also act as a wood saw. And as you can tell here, you have a bottle opener at the top there. The very front here can be used for supposedly removing hooks. I would not think that it would work too well as for a hook remover. But what I like about this one is just the simplistic nature of it. It's such a simple design that somebody came up with. As you notice, the blade is offset here. Notice over here, there is a little cat. I'm fostering a cat for my son. That's Belinda. She's deciding she wants to be in the picture. In any case, this is the does all. This was made in the 50s or so. You don't see it too often. You can even hook it up with a lanyard. They also mentioned that you could cram a stick in there and use it for spear fishing and stuff like that. But what I like about it is just super light and takes up no room. It's the ideal size to me, at least blade wise, for a camp knife. And it's sharp as a dickens. And if you wanted to make the handle a little longer, all you need to do is put a stick in there and you could have a much longer handle. So the only thing that is problematic about it is the fact that the blade is offset. It's off to one side. And to me, it would have made more sense if they'd have had these pieces of metal fold be a little longer and have one piece of the metal fold to one side and then the other side to fold to the other side, so that you could have had the blade centered in the knife. But that's something you probably don't see too often. But I think they got the name right, does all. They were thinking of something that could do all of your camping chores. Would not be ideal for bushcrafting, but it would still make a decent enough bait knife and would definitely work around as a general utility knife for camping. I think that's the end of my old-fashioned knives, except for this one, and this one I would say is more transitional because this is a modern version of a knife that has been around forever, and this is by R. Murphy. R. Murphy is a company in Massachusetts, so this is a relatively inexpensive USA-made knife using, I believe, 440 stainless for the blade here. And you see there, Ayers, Massachusetts. And this was known as the Fisherman's Pal. And if you notice, it is a little bit of an upswept skinner, but the blade is straight enough and it's long enough to actually function decent enough for most camp chores. You do have the scaler on top. You can actually cut notches with it also because of how thin the blade is. Blade is strong enough, but as you can also tell, the blade is not a full tang. Matter of fact, there was no hole back here. I drilled the hole through this. It's cocobolo wood, so it's really good wood. The blade is held on by 2 rivets. I also put the little fishy design in there. I carved that in myself. But this was a knife that I actually do like, and I have carried it a little bit and I have used it. I've also used it around in the kitchen because it's just a really good slicer. And that's one of the things that I think differs from most bushcraft knives. The camp knife makes a better slicer than a bushcraft knife. You can't baton with it nearly as well. It's not going to take the beating of a bushcraft knife, but for light chores around the camp and even medium and sometimes heavy duty chores around the camp, a good camping knife is going to handle it. This one comes with they have a one-size-fits-all sheath for a lot of their knives, but it does what it's supposed to do, which is hold a knife. So there's that one. And let's move into closer to what we would consider the modern era. And I'm going to start with one that is made by a company that is known for its camping, Coleman. And this is an interesting knife because it is it's kind of ideal for what you would want for a camp knife. However, it was made for the collector. And I think this is an excellent knife for camping. This would have been a great design for camping. You kind of have a bit of a beaver tail going on here. You do have the lanyard hole there. The handle is burl wood. You've got the little Coleman lantern on both sides of the burl wood so that you know who makes it and everything. And you've got a really well-made blade. Long swedge on top, but the blade is more or less, while it is, I guess you could say it's a trailing point, the point is still more or less a clip also. Blade is very straight. You got a good belly on the blade, a little bit of a hollow grind going on, and just a good length of blade too. The handle, some people would probably prefer a better guard going on up there, but you do know where the handle ends and it just feels good in the hand. Overall length on this one, I think I got a ruler here. Yeah, this one comes in right at 10 inches. The blade is a little over 5 inches, probably about 5 1/4 inches on the blade, so 4 3/4 inches on the handle, which gives you plenty of room to grip and change your grip on the knife. So I really like this knife, and this is kind of what I think of when I hear camping knife. And a lot of people would look at that and go, well, no, that's definitely a hunting knife. But I don't think this knife is going to skin nearly as well as some of the upswept skinners out there. So this is more general use knife to me. Hunters out there, you can disagree with me and also tell me where I'm wrong, because I'd love to hear that too. But I just kind of like this knife. It's a beautiful knife. So that's the other thing that you kind of want when you're going camping, especially if you're going glamping. This is probably more for glamping. Now, for those who don't know, camping at best will include a tent that you might be able to sleep in. But a lot of people think of camping as more like, well, you got a sleeping bag and you're going to sleep wherever you can. And, the tent is more or less a luxury for camping. Glamping, the least you'll have is a tent if that tent has air conditioning. You know what I mean? Anyway, glamping is basically when you're at a campground and you're going to have good facilities for like using the bathroom. You're not going to have to dig your own slit trench to go use the bathroom in. There's going to probably be showers available. A source of fresh water is available. You might have a gift shop nearby where you can go and buy your Twizzlers and your beef jerky and your steaks and all this other stuff. Whereas when camping, you're probably going to have a tent at a kind of more of a remote site, and you are probably going to be sleeping on the ground, or at least more or less on the ground. You might have a cover on the inside of your tent that covers the ground, and then your sleeping bag and your air mattress or something is on top of that. But with glamping, you might have an actual camper with air conditioning and everything else, a stove and everything else. And this would be a pretty cool knife for glamping because it looks more glamorous than the general utility knife that you might run into in camping. So this knife, where was it at? I showed it to you earlier. Gotta still be around. This is where I'll be editing some space out. Hi everybody, Jake the Jackalope here. While Tobias is out looking for a knife that's right under his nose, I want to just remind you not to get eaten by a bear. And you know one of the easiest ways not to get eaten by a bear? Don't get fat. Because fat people are twice as likely to get eaten by a bear than skinny people. You know why? Because fat people can't outrun their skinny friends.
And the slowest person is the one the bear is going to be chomping on. Just ask Skip next time you see him. So remember now, a proper diet and good exercise is a great way to make sure you don't get eaten by a bear, because fat people are twice as likely to be a bear snack as a skinny person who just outran them. So be that skinny person. It's right there, Tobias. Dang it, can't you see it? The knife is right there. Remember, don't get eaten by a bear.
This one here, the Rough Rider 844, the one I showed earlier. This is more like your camping knife. You're not going to worry as much about it getting damaged. The blade has more of a satin finish going on. It still has a burlwood handle, so it's a nice looking knife, but it's not as nice looking, and it doesn't have the mirror polish that you see on the Coleman. So this is a knife where you're going to look at it and go, do I really want to scratch up that blade? With this one, you're going to go, I don't care if I scratch up this blade. And that's probably why this is called the Collector's Series from Coleman. And this is just the Rough Rider 844. This is really designed to go out there and beat the snot out of stuff. And if you break it, you break it. You know, $14 knife at the time. I think it's around $18, $19 now. You're not going to find this one again. I don't think Coleman makes it anymore. It was a limited run knife that Coleman came out with in the early 2000s. And you can also see the difference in the sheath. This is a really nice leather sheath with a good snap going on. And this one came with a cheap nylon sheath. I repositioned the snap because it was always getting in the way of holding the knife in the sheath. So, and I didn't care at all that I was messing with it or changing it around. I altered it to fit my need. I don't think I would be altering this to fit my need because, well, it's a nicer knife. So even some camp knives are really designed more for show than actual use. Anyway, let's move on to another knife that I wish I would see more of. And this was originally a knife that was designed by Ridget. I have to put the number somewhere down here, what Ridget used to call it. But it came back to life when SMKW was making knives for Turtle Man, and this is the Turtle Man Lightning. And I really like this knife too. And I would love to see this knife show up again. And I would love to see this with like just a rubber handle. You've got the harpoon blade there, which really gives you a lot of space to index your thumb so you can do some serious cutting down and pressing on it. And you've got the little bit of a recurve here, which is really handy when you're doing a lot of slicing and cutting and stuff. So this is another one, and it's got the Bob Lovelace style handle going on there with a nice palm swell. This is a knife that if I had another one, this is a knife that I would definitely be taking camping. And it came with a nylon and pleather sheath. And this one is a beauty of a camp knife. You could take this one glamping or camping, but first they need to just come out with it again. This one is in 440C, which is also a little bit better of a steel. So that's another one. Oh, you can also horizontal carry this one, sort of. I don't think that's going to work too well though. Anyway, another camp knife. Let's move on to a few other ones. This is one, I got to break this one out simply because this is a knife that my brother-in-law actually used when he was camping. And the buck fans are out there going, where's the buck? Where's the buck? Where's the buck? Well, Buck 119, definitely a very usable knife. It got a good handle for it. The handle is definitely long enough. You can definitely position it in a couple different ways. This is going to be impervious to water and rust and everything else. You got the 420 HC on this. You might have better than that on this one. But you got a 6-inch blade on it, so it's a little longer than what I would use for camping, but definitely a excellent choice for most people when you think of a camping knife. This one has the, I dropped the sheath. This one has the full sheath, black leather. You can contain the entire knife in there, so you have the knife protected when not in use. So this is also a really good choice for a lot of people. Your knife is well protected. It is a leather sheath though, so that would be a problem for some people. But the Buck 119, definitely an excellent choice for camping, and probably one I should have shown earlier because by now no one's watching anymore. And now I know there are cold steel fans out there going, well, what about cold steel? Well, I can't answer the question because I do not have anything by Cold Steel. I'm sure they have several excellent knives for camping, just like Gerber has excellent knives for camping. I'm sure you name a knife company and they probably have a good knife for camping. Everyone's going to have a favorite knife for camping. Tops probably has one too. But when it comes to newer knives that are good for camping, the only other company that I can actually show in the video is really Essie. And a lot of people are already going to say, well, you've got the SE3, SE4, SE5, and all of those would be excellent choices. I'm sure even the SE6 for some people, they're going to say, I use my SE6 all the time when I go camping, and that's fine. But the two knives that are most often with me is the Azula. I like this knife. I picked it up specifically for little camp chores and stuff. Like I said, I mostly do day camping these days, or day hiking these days, so I don't really need that knife that is going to be used day in and day out and for everything around a campfire and everything. But I think the SE Azula is an excellent choice for a lot of stuff when camping. Obviously a little on the small side. The other option though is a knife that I picked up because I thought, man, that is the knife that I have been looking for a long time, something like that. And this is the JG5. This was an SMKW exclusive for a long time. I don't know if it is still an SMKW exclusive or not, but it is the designed by John Gibson, and it is a Nessmuk style knife. And those were the knives that Nessmuk used for the longest time. This one I think is really good. The blade is not extremely thick. It's about an 1/8 inch thick at the spine. You've got a full flat grind, which is something that really makes it useful as a slicing knife and such. And you can also, if you wanted to, do some batoning with it. It's 1095 carbon steel, so it's heavy enough. You've got removable micarta scales on here. You can take these off so you can clean it all up if you needed to. And it's got a really nice edge going on with it. And it's got a long enough belly on the blade so that you can do some serious cutting with it, serious slicing, and other chores with it. So I kind of like this one. I have not had the opportunity to take it out and put it through its paces, but I can't wait to do it. But I think that considering who designed it and everything, I think the Nessmuk or the JG5 by Essie is a really good option for camping. Just haven't had a chance to find out for sure yet. So if you have used it while camping and stuff, I'd love to hear your stories about it. And it comes with the stylish sheet that I really like. Just a nice holster style sheet that you drop it in, push it down, and it holds it in place. It's deep enough that you don't have to worry about it falling out. And like I said, once you seat it, it seats in there fairly well. So, and you do have a lanyard hole on there too, so if you need to use a lanyard, you can. So that is the next knife I want to take out and do some camping with. So if I have the opportunity to go camping this fall, this is the knife I would take with me and see how it works out. And I would also carry this one because I just like the SE Azula, and it's a nice small knife. So Those are the two I take right now, as opposed to 40 years ago, when this is the knife that I would say this is my go-to camping knife. So things change over time. Anyway, I hope you like that ramble through a lot of fixed blade camping knives, and I think in the near future what I'll do is show you some of the folding knives that I think would make excellent camp knives, both old and new.
Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.